Chapter 1. A Struggling Student. Amir's Frustration with Learning English. In the bustling heart of the city, where towering skyscrapers cast long shadows and the streets hummed with the constant rhythm of life, a young man named Amir found himself adrift in a sea of unfamiliar words and phrases. Amir had arrived in this vibrant metropolis just a few years ago, his sights set on a better future. But the challenge of mastering the English language had proven to be a daunting task. As he navigated the crowded sidewalks, Amir often felt like an outsider, struggling to understand the rapid-fire exchanges around him. He would strain to decipher the meaning behind the conversations, his brow furrowed in concentration, only to be left feeling more lost and frustrated than before. The simple act of ordering a coffee or asking for directions had become a source of anxiety, as Amir feared the embarrassment of mispronouncing words or stumbling over his responses. At night, in the solitude of his small apartment, Amir would pore over his English textbooks, meticulously studying vocabulary and grammar rules. He would repeat the words aloud, hoping to ingrain them in his memory. But the progress felt painfully slow. Amir had always been a diligent student, but his determination was being tested by the sheer complexity of the language. Why is it so hard? He would often wonder, his fingers tracing the pages of his textbook in frustration. I'm trying so hard, but I still can't seem to get it right. Amir's self-doubt began to creep in, undermining his confidence and making him question whether he would ever truly master English. The fear of being perceived as incompetent or unintelligent weighed heavily on his mind, and he found himself withdrawing from social situations, preferring the solace of his own company to the risk of embarrassment. One day, as Amir sat in his English class, his eyes fixed on the teacher's lips as she spoke, he felt a growing sense of despair. The words seemed to flow effortlessly from her mouth, while Amir struggled to keep up, his mind racing to translate and comprehend each sentence. He couldn't help but compare himself to his classmates, who appeared to grasp the material with ease, leaving Amir feeling increasingly isolated and inadequate. Just as Amir was about to give in to his frustration, a gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. "Amir, can I speak with you for a moment?" It was Miss Samantha, his English teacher, her warm eyes filled with concern. Amir's heart sank, fearing that he had somehow disappointed her. He followed Miss Samantha to her desk, bracing himself for the inevitable critique of his performance. Chapter 2. A wise mentor's intervention. Miss Samantha's advice. One day, as Amir sat in Miss Samantha's English class, his teacher noticed the dejected look on his face. Miss Samantha was a compassionate and experienced educator who had a knack for recognizing the potential in her students, even when they struggled to see it themselves. Approaching Amir after the lesson, Miss Samantha placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Amir, I couldn't help but notice you seem a bit down today. Is everything all right?" Amir looked up, his eyes reflecting a mix of resignation and determination. I'm trying so hard, Miss Samantha, but the English language feels like a never-ending maze. No matter how much I study, I can't seem to make any real progress." Miss Samantha nodded empathetically. "I understand how you feel, Amir. Learning a new language can be incredibly challenging, especially when you're surrounded by it every day. But I want you to know that I believe in you, and I think I may have a way to help you break through this plateau." Amir's eyes widened with a glimmer of hope. "Really? What is it?" "Well, Amir, I've noticed that you're a very determined and hardworking student. You put in the effort. But sometimes we need to find a different approach to truly unlock our potential," Miss Samantha explained. Have you ever considered immersing yourself in English stories? Amir furrowed his brow, unsure of where his teacher was going with this. Stories? I'm not sure I understand. Hear me out, Miss Samantha continued. Reading and listening to stories in English can be an incredibly powerful tool for language acquisition. Not only does it help you build your vocabulary and improve your grammar, but it also allows you to internalize the rhythm and flow of the language. She paused, gauging Amir's reaction. When you engage with stories, you're not just memorizing words and rules. You're experiencing the language in a more natural, immersive way. It can make all the difference in your ability to communicate fluently. Amir considered her words, his initial skepticism slowly giving way to intrigue. I've never thought of it that way before. But how exactly would I go about doing this? Miss Samantha smiled, sensing Amir's growing interest. Well, I'd recommend starting with some simple, engaging stories, perhaps children's books or short stories. Read them aloud, listen to audiobook versions, or even find videos of the stories being read. The key is to make it an active, enjoyable experience, not just passive learning. She paused, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. And you know, Amir, the best part is that you can find stories on just about any topic that interests you. That way, you're not just improving your English, you're also exploring the world and expanding your knowledge. Amir felt a spark of excitement ignite within him. The idea of using stories to learn English was certainly unconventional. But the more Miss Samantha described it, the more it resonated with him. Perhaps this could be the breakthrough he had been searching for. All right, Miss Samantha, you've convinced me. I'm willing to give it a try, Amir said, his voice brimming with determination. Where do I start? Miss Samantha beamed, thrilled to see Amir's newfound enthusiasm. Wonderful! I'll put together a list of some great stories for you to begin with. And remember, Amir, the key is to have fun with it. Don't think of it as just another language lesson. Think of it as an adventure, a chance to explore new worlds and expand your horizons. Amir nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities. As he left the classroom, a sense of cautious optimism began to take root within him. Maybe, just maybe, this storytelling approach could be the answer he had been seeking all along. As he left the classroom, a sense of cautious optimism began to take root within him. Maybe, just maybe, this storytelling approach could be the answer he had been seeking all along. Chapter 3: Amir's Reluctant Embrace of Storytelling. Amir stared at the stack of books Miss Samantha had placed on his desk, his brow furrowed with uncertainty. The titles were unfamiliar, and the thought of immersing himself in English stories felt daunting. After all, he had been struggling for years to master the language, and the idea of using stories as a learning tool seemed almost too good to be true. As Miss Samantha watched Amir's hesitation, a gentle smile spread across her face. I know this may seem like a strange approach, Amir, she said, her voice warm and reassuring. But I truly believe that embracing these stories will help you unlock the power of the English language. Amir looked up, his dark eyes reflecting a mix of skepticism and curiosity. How can reading stories help me learn? He asked, his accent still thick and his words halting. Miss Samantha leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. Stories have a way of bringing language to life in a way that textbooks and grammar exercises simply can't. When you read or listen to a story, you're not just memorizing vocabulary and rules. You're immersing yourself in the rhythm and flow of the language. Amir considered her words, his fingers tracing the spine of one of the books. "But what if I don't understand the stories?" he asked, his voice tinged with worry. "What if I get lost and frustrated?" "That's where I come in," Miss Samantha replied, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. "I'll be here to guide you, to help you navigate the stories and unpack the meaning. And the more you engage with them, the more natural and confident your English will become." Amir nodded slowly, his resolve beginning to strengthen. He knew that Miss Samantha had never steered him wrong before, and her unwavering belief in his abilities was a powerful motivator. "Okay," he said, his voice steadier now. "I'll give it a try." With a triumphant smile, Miss Samantha handed Amir the first book in the stack. "Start with this one," she said. "It's a classic tale, and the language is accessible, but still rich and engaging." Amir took the book, his fingers tracing the worn cover. He could feel the weight of the pages, the promise of a new world waiting to be discovered. Taking a deep breath, he opened the book and began to read. At first, the words seemed to jumble together, and Amir found himself stumbling over unfamiliar phrases and idioms. But as he continued reading, something began to shift. The more he immersed himself in the story, the more the language started to make sense. The rhythm and flow of the words began to feel natural, and Amir found himself getting lost in the narrative, his mind transported to the vivid scenes unfolding on the page. When he finally looked up, Miss Samantha was watching him with a knowing smile. "How was it?" she asked, her voice gentle. Amir blinked, momentarily disoriented. It was amazing," he said, his eyes wide with wonder. "I could actually understand what was happening, and the story was so engaging. I felt like I was there, in the middle of it all." Miss Samantha nodded, her expression warm and encouraging. "That's the power of storytelling, Amir. It has a way of drawing you in, of making the language come alive in a way that textbooks simply can't." Amir's gaze drifted back to the book, his fingers tracing the cover once more. "I want to read more," he said, his voice filled with a newfound determination. With a triumphant smile, Miss Samantha handed him the next book in the stack. "Then let's get started," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "The more you immerse yourself in these stories, the more you'll discover the true beauty and power of the English language." Amir nodded, his heart racing with a mixture of trepidation and anticipation. As he opened the book and began to read, he couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and possibility. Perhaps, with the help of these stories, he could finally master the language that had eluded him for so long. Chapter 4: The Transformative Power of Stories. As the weeks passed, Amir found himself increasingly drawn into the world of English stories. What had once felt like a chore had now become a source of genuine enjoyment and fascination. He marveled at the way the narratives he encountered seemed to breathe life into the language, revealing its nuances and complexities in a way that no textbook or grammar lesson ever could. Amir's daily routine now included dedicated time for reading and listening to stories. He would curl up on his couch, book in hand, and lose himself in the vivid descriptions and captivating dialogues. The more he immersed himself, the more he began to notice subtle shifts in his own language abilities. One day, as Amir was reading a short story aloud, he stumbled upon a word he had never encountered before. Instead of immediately reaching for his dictionary, he paused, allowing the context of the story to guide him. Suddenly, The meaning of the word became clear, and Amir felt a surge of pride at his newfound understanding. Miss Samantha was right, he thought to himself, a smile spreading across his face. The stories are helping me learn in a way that textbooks never could. Amir's confidence continued to grow as he navigated the rhythms and cadences of the English language through his literary adventures. He found himself anticipating the twists and turns of the narratives, eagerly awaiting the next revelation or plot twist. The more he read and listened, the more natural and effortless his own speech and writing became. One particularly memorable moment occurred during a class discussion. Amir had been hesitant to participate, fearing that his accent or grammatical errors would draw unwanted attention. But this time, he raised his hand, his heart pounding, and shared his thoughts on the short story they had just read. To his surprise, his classmates listened intently, nodding in agreement and even asking follow-up questions. As Amir spoke, he realized that the words were flowing from him with a newfound fluency and eloquence. He had internalized the patterns and structures of the language, and they now came to him as naturally as his native tongue. The look of pride and satisfaction on Miss Samantha's face was all the validation he needed. From that day on, Amir became an active participant in class discussions, eagerly sharing his insights and perspectives. His teachers marveled at the transformation, and his classmates began to seek him out, asking for recommendations on which stories to read or which audiobooks to listen to. Amir's newfound love for storytelling extended beyond the classroom as well. He found himself gravitating towards English language films, television shows, and podcasts, immersing himself in the rich tapestry of narratives that the language had to offer. Each new story he encountered became a gateway to deeper understanding and personal growth. As Amir's language skills continued to blossom, he also discovered a deeper appreciation for the art of storytelling itself. He marveled at the way authors could weave words together to create vivid, emotional experiences, and he began to understand the power of narrative to shape our perceptions and beliefs. One evening, as Amir was listening to a particularly captivating audiobook, he found himself transported to the world of the story, his senses heightened and his imagination running wild. In that moment, he realized that the stories he had embraced were not just tools for language learning, but gateways to a richer, more fulfilling existence. Amir's transformation was not just about mastering the mechanics of the English language. It was about discovering a newfound passion for the written and spoken word. He had found a way to make learning not just a means to an end, but a joyful and rewarding experience in its own right. As he continued on his journey, Amir knew that his love for stories would be a lifelong companion, guiding him through the complexities of language and enriching his understanding of the world around him. The power of storytelling had become a transformative force in his life, and he was eager to share that discovery with others who, like him, were seeking to embrace a new language and a new way of being. Chapter 5. Pingyung, Amir's breakthrough moment. The day of Amir's big presentation had arrived, and as he stood in front of the classroom, his heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This was his chance to showcase the progress he had made in his English language skills, and he was determined not to let his fears hold him back. As Amir began to speak, the words flowed from his lips with a newfound confidence and fluency. Gone were the hesitations and stumbles that had once plagued his speech. Instead, He navigated the presentation with ease, weaving together the key points he had meticulously prepared, his voice clear and his pronunciation precise. The audience, made up of his classmates and Miss Samantha, listened intently, their eyes widening with surprise and admiration as Amir's mastery of the language became increasingly evident. Amir could feel the pride swelling within him, a stark contrast to the self-doubt that had once consumed him. When the presentation came to a close, the room erupted in applause, and Amir felt a surge of accomplishment wash over him. As he stepped down from the podium, Miss Samantha approached him, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Amir, that was truly remarkable," she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm so proud of the progress you've made. Your dedication and hard work have paid off in the most wonderful way." Amir felt a lump in his throat as he met Miss Samantha's gaze, his eyes brimming with tears of joy. "Thank you, Miss Samantha," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance and belief in me." In that moment, Amir realized just how far he had come. The frustration and self-doubt that had once plagued him had been replaced by a newfound confidence and a deep appreciation for the power of storytelling. As he mingled with his classmates, answering their questions and sharing his experiences, Amir couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led him to this point. He remembered the initial hesitation he had felt when Miss Samantha had first suggested immersing himself in English stories, and how that hesitation had slowly given way to a genuine enthusiasm. Amir had discovered that the more he engaged with the narratives, the more natural and effortless his English became. The rhythm and flow of the language had become ingrained in his mind, and he found himself instinctively choosing the right words and phrases to convey his thoughts. But it wasn't just the language skills that had transformed. Amir's perspective on learning had shifted as well. He had come to see storytelling not just as a tool for language acquisition, but as a gateway to a deeper understanding of the world around him. The stories he had encountered had opened his eyes to new cultures, new ways of thinking, and new perspectives. He had been transported to different times and places, and in the process had gained a richer understanding of the human experience. As the day drew to a close, Amir found himself surrounded by his classmates, all of whom were eager to learn more about his journey. He shared his story with them, describing the challenges he had faced and the triumphs he had achieved. "It's not just about learning the language," Amir said, his voice brimming with conviction. "It's about embracing the stories, the narratives that bring the language to life. When you do that, the words become more than just words. They become a gateway to a whole new world